Imperfection is realistic. Those are not my words, but they are the powerful words of someone that I am so honored to have with me here today. And that's Kolbie Blum. She's a landscape watercolor artist. And honestly, her and I have very similar approaches to creative mindset. We're going to be chatting today and painting together. She's going to teach me how to do something, and I have no idea what it is, and it's going to be really cool. So, do you want to talk and paint with us? Come on, let's go. All right, friends, here is Kolbie. Kolbie, say hello to everyone.
Hello.
This is so cool. Never done this before, but let's get right into it because I have questions. So let's have like a creative elevator pitch. Like, who are you? It's not a pitch, but you know what I mean. Like, Who are you? What do you do? What makes you you?
I am a watercolor landscape artist, although I paint, other things too. But watercolor landscapes is really where I found something deep inside of me. And it was important because up until about 5 years ago, I thought I was terrible at art. I thought I was so bad at it. I thought it was never a skill I anticipated ever wanting or pursuing. I was creative in a lot of other ways, but I majored in literature in college, so I'm a writer. I did singing and theater and lots of other performing things when I was in school. But art is something that I thought was outside of my skill set. And so I always like to lead with that whenever people ask me this question, because I am now a full-time artist and it is a completely unexpected life path that happened because one day during my lunch break at, my government job, I was scrolling through Instagram and stumbled upon lettering and watercolor videos and thought to myself, these are so beautiful. I wish that I could do that. And for a few weeks, it kind of stayed at that I wish place. And I wish turned into, why can't I do that? I bet I could give it a try. And so I bought some brush pens and I bought some watercolor. And I have since spent basically all of my free time trying to show people that the only thing preventing them from being creative, from diving into this world of creativity, is their mindset. But one of the biggest barriers is whether or not you believe you can do something, whether or not you think you have permission to do it, and what are the mental barriers that are in your body that are telling you that you can't. And so that, leads me to, long story long, the second half, I'm a watercolor landscape artist and I focus a lot on creative mindset. So if you look for me on Instagram, my handle is this writing desk. A lot of my videos are tutorials, but then I try really hard to present kind of like bite-sized ideas that will help beginner artists or experienced artists feel more confident and have more courage as they go on the creative journey. So that's me.
I love long story longs, just so you know. So never have to apologize for that. For a while, I've been following you, but not for as long as you've been around, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'm like, did I like copy that swing from Colby? Oh man, I hope I didn't. Because seriously, I feel like our approach is so approach to mindset and creative mindset is so similar. I am making art for joy's sake. You mentioned, I asked you, what are your mantras? And I started this video with one, which was imperfection is realistic. And so that's right along with the art for joy's sake thing. And then courage. What was it? Courage
over perfection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So good. So good. So good. So how do you feel? Like, what's your reaction when I say that building, like courage, bravery in our artwork, fearlessness is a habit that you have to learn.
What
would you say to that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And if you agree, like how do you teach that habit?
Oh yeah, I talk about this all the time. I refer to courage and self-compassion and curiosity. I call them muscles. So they are muscles that you have to build and you have to exercise, because if you don't do them consistently, they're just going to be monumentally difficult every single time. The biggest barrier for me when I first started painting was the fact that I considered myself a perfectionist for most of my life. And like I was proudly a perfectionist, because, I'm either going to do it right, I'm going to be the best, or I'm not going to do it at all. And, I'm that typical overachiever, straight A's, whatever. I'm going to prove my value based on my productivity. That's me. And mostly that whole all or nothing perfectionist mindset led to a lot of fear, led to a lot of anxiety, led to a lot of me only doing things I knew I was good at. And so anytime I was the least bit uncomfortable, it felt like my whole world was crumbling in front of me. So, starting watercolor and exploring with watercolor was kind of unexpectedly the catalyst I needed to see that perfection and control actually aren't always beautiful. They're not even always what the goal should be. And but it takes courage to recognize that. Like, it takes courage to unlearn all of these narratives that we've been given. It takes courage to unlearn that, you think that you're not qualified to make art if you're not making masterpieces every time. You think that you're not allowed to use fancy art supplies if you're just a beginner. And the reality is that no one is stopping you, but you're only like building the courage to do that, to unlearn all of that takes practice. And so that's something that I tell my students all the time. Like, yes, I'm teaching you how to paint landscapes, but more than that, I am trying to help you exercise courage. Every single time you put brush to paper, you are practicing courage. And it's not just, so you can be a better painter. It's also so that you can have a stronger sense of self in your life.
So, this is something I talk about, finding your style. I say, like, harness your weird. Like, how did you come about figuring out what made you as an artist, your style, your approach? Like, how did that happen? I get asked that a lot. Like, how do I find my style?
So my journey started as a hand letterer. I actually started doing calligraphy with brush pens. That's, if you scroll down way to the bottom of my like 2,700 posts from 6 years ago, you'll find my calligraphy posts. And then I started using watercolor to make backgrounds for my calligraphy. Then I started using watercolor for the calligraphy. And then eventually I realized I was only making the backgrounds because that's just what I wanted to do. Like, I would make the backgrounds, then I would be like, oh, I don't really want to put lettering on this because I just don't. And so then I kind of landed on watercolor landscapes. And for a long time, I've been on Instagram for a long time. I mean, I don't know if 6 years is a long time, but Instagram has seen many changes since I started posting in 2016. And when I very first started, like, simple landscapes were my jam, like 3-layer landscapes, gradient for a sky, gouache for the stars, tiny little black trees for a silhouette. Those, especially when I first started painting, those were the things I kind of became known for because I posted them all the time. And people ask me, like, how did you know that was your thing? And I didn't know it was my thing. It was just something that I liked making. And so I kept making it. And the funny thing is, when I started connecting those simple night skies to my identity, like, that's who I am, that's when they started to be boring. That's when it started to feel stifling to stay in that space. And so it was scary to stop painting those, to paint other things, or to expand out of that, because I felt like these simple night skies, they are who I am. They are what made me whatever, like those for reference, in case most people watching this probably maybe not have not come across me, but those simple night skies were like, they built my Instagram account to be what it is. They helped to build it to be what it is today. Like my most popular Skillshare class to this day is that simple night sky class. And so it felt like I had to stick in that round to stay in that space. But as soon as I started giving myself permission to make exploring and to make curiosity my thing, not about finding one thing and staying with it because I have to, but about feeling like paying attention to what feels good in my body when I'm painting, that's when I feel the best. And so whenever anybody asks me like, how did you find your style? My answer is I haven't. I haven't found a style.
Right.
For years, I mean, you can see, obviously I paint lots of landscapes, but they're not all the same. I paint lots of different kinds of landscapes. I experiment with lots of different techniques. The less I focus on who am I, and the more I focus on what will bring me the most wonder in this moment, that's when I feel the most alive.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. I never really thought about it that way, because I have tried to give folks tactical ways to, you know, uncover their weird or their style.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I will say, like what you explained just now, you followed your joy. I will say that, like, follow your joy, these little steps where you find wonder and magic, and then take another step in that direction and kind of ride that wave, you know?
Yes. When you're trying to find your style, for me, whenever I have been in that space, because obviously, like, I'm speaking as if I'm at this elevated, like, oh, I am never blah, blah, blah. But everything I ever talk about, it's because I struggle with it every day. So, like, I long for somebody to come down and say, this is your identity and this is who you are and this is what your value is. But no one's going to do that. Like, that comes from inside of me. And so for me, I remember especially early days, especially early on when I was doing the lettering thing and just about to start going into the watercolor thing, I desperately wanted to find a style or like land on something, because I felt like that would prove that I was worthy of being in this space. Like that, at that point, if I find a style, now I'm an artist. Now I can say I'm an artist. When the reality is, you don't need to prove anything. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You have value as a human and as an artist, full stop. And no matter whether you find a style or you just explore randomly for your whole life, it doesn't matter at all. Because what matters, like you said, is where you find the things that fill you up. You know, that's again where perfectionism kind of sneaks its way in, where even if you think you're actively combating it, even if you think you're actively like trying to build this really healthy growth mindset, and you think, okay, well, the more that I can be curious, then I will find my style. It's like, no, the more you can be curious, the more you will feel joy. And maybe you will land in a space where you feel joy painting the same thing over and over and over again. And that's great. But as soon as you start feeling like you've landed at a spot that is your identity, that's where the expectations come in, right? That's where the attachments come in. And especially if you start a journey thinking, the end goal is that I will land in what my style is going to be. That is a heavy expectation. Expectations are heavy. When you expect something from your creativity, when you expect something from whatever, paint session you're going to sit down in, it becomes heavy, and you can't have the fullest amount of joy if you're also trying to hold expectation. And so it's just this whole thing where And I'm saying this from somebody who for basically my whole life has craved external validation from all, everywhere. I've just craved it. I've just desperately wanted it. And it's taken a lot of therapy, a lot of therapy, a lot of journaling, a lot of self-confronting to realize that no one is going to take you seriously if you don't take you seriously. And in fact, it doesn't even matter who takes you seriously. Like if you have a certain milestone you feel like you have to hit before you feel like an artist, it's always going to move. You're never going to land there.
Ugh.
Yeah.
These truth bombs, like seriously, like, oh my gosh. There's a couple phrases like that just kind of like make me uncomfortable in this in our conversation when I talk with folks. And one of them is, what should I do next? What should I be learning? And the other is, you should just. Mm-hmm. You should just do this. Mm-hmm. You should just do that. And because along the lines of what you said, it implies some sort of final destination, this imaginary final destination of what being worthy, being good enough, having found your style, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you should just, like you said, it implies that there's some kind of plan, right? Like your life is this big mystery that's already laid out, and it's your job to see if you make the right moves to uncover all of the things, as opposed to your life is a mystery because it hasn't been created yet. Mm-hmm. There is no map. You create the map. You are the map maker, like Brene Brown says, right? We are map makers. You're the one. You're the one who gets to decide. And you're the one who gets to stand strong in the space that was always yours, regardless of how messy it is, regardless of how inconsistent it is, regardless of how much experience you have or don't have. Like, you don't need, there's no you should just, because nobody is a better expert on your joy and your wonder than you.
Yeah. Like, I wish I had I keep thinking of that movie. I'm going to date myself here, but The Preacher's Wife, where like, the dude's preaching and Whitney's behind there and they sing at certain points of like exclamation. I'm like, I want a choir. Like, joy. Every time you say something amazing, but then we would just be singing the whole time. So.
Well, that's nice.
Okay, so describe your biggest stumbling block and how you overcame it.
My biggest stumbling block to beginning easily was thinking that experience and talent were gatekeepers to creativity. So thinking that I needed to learn all of the rules, I needed to learn all of the techniques, I needed all of the secret sauces, like I needed all of the secrets before I could give myself permission to explore on my own. And that's the same for investing, like heavily investing in my creativity. I didn't buy professional art supplies for like 3 years. It was like 3 years before I finally bought good paper. and to be clear, you don't need professional art supplies to make beautiful art. You don't. You can make beautiful art no matter what you have on hand. You really don't need like the professional, fancy, really expensive stuff. That said, you are worthy of the professional, fancy, expensive stuff, regardless of what your level of experience. Nice. And as a person who teaches watercolor, especially like people, I don't know what it is, but people are so willing to spend more money on paint. They're so willing to spend more money on brushes, but they just refuse to believe that paper, like spending so much money on paper is going to be worth it. They just think that using student grade Canson XL is going to, be just the same as the really expensive paper, but it's not. It's not.
It's not. Okay, so can we just like little detour here? Like,
Yeah.
what is this thing? You and I are out there, we're teaching, we're talking, we're responding to comments. And so no shade to anyone who's had this mindset, because so many people do.
Yes.
But
Yes.
what is this thing with, I'll use the good stuff when?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we get past that?
You know what?
I'm constantly telling folks, like, literally, I was teaching a private lesson last week and I was like, okay, here's your homework and do it on the good paper.
Yes.
And she was like, what?
Yeah. I've thought so much about this because I have done this. I have hoarded good paper and thought, well, for my practice, I really should only use my student grade paper. And, in defense of that, I think that using cheap paper can be freeing, right? It can be freeing because you feel like I can explore whatever I want and it doesn't matter because this paper costs like basically nothing. And so it is what it is. But, it is more freeing for me, in my experience, when I finally got over that stump, when I finally got over that, it was really a matter of self-compassion. Like, it was really a matter of shifting my focus from, okay, my goal of buying professional paper is so that I can make better art and have it, have that validate my investment. Like, I need to make good art in order to prove that it was a worthy way to spend my money. But that centers the art. That centers the product. That centers the creation. When creativity is not about the creation, creativity is about the creator. Creativity is about you. The whole point of creativity is so that you can feel something. And if you feel more joy using fancy art supplies, even if you're just scribbling all over it, if that brings you joy, then use the fancy art supplies because you, my friend, are worth the fancy paper.
I don't want to exit this particular portion of the conversation, but of course there is, I'm going to presume, you and I are coming from a place of privilege.
Oh, yes.
That we can.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah. And that we can, really indulge in the good paper.
Yeah.
So going back to what you said is so, so, so important. I would rather you paint on a brown paper bag than not paint at all.
Yes.
And then, and I always use the example of Basquiat. He just used the resourcefulness, and of course, like, his end story is crazy because he became, an overnight sensation, but he painted on anything.
Yeah.
He painted on anything and it became high art. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, but I'd be remiss not to mention, that obviously if Canson XL, if whatever it is what you are able to fit into the budget, then you paint on it proudly. But
yes, and it's still art. Yeah.
100%. And it can still be framed and it can still be, heck, it can still be sold. Okay.
Yes.
Let's get it out there.
I have sold many paintings on Canson XL paper using not professional grade watercolor. Yes. So I'm really, really glad you brought that up because my point was you are worthy of the fancy paper and you are an artist no matter what supplies you use.
And I think, I love habits. I love encouraging creative habits. I think something that we could do, if you have that fear, that kind of, that worthiness conversation going on in your head, like, I can't use the good stuff until I figure this out or whatever it may be, like, get into the habit of using the good paper at least like once a week in a situation where you feel it's not worthy.
Yeah.
And see what happens. And that could help you get into a different mindset of what this act of art making is really about.
Yeah. And I love that. I love intentionally doing something scary to kind of challenge
Yeah.
that scarcity mindset, because the reality is that scarcity might be a very real part of your life, right? Scarcity of finances, scarcity of resources, that might be a very real part of your life. But that doesn't mean you have to have the scarcity mindset to go along with it, because no matter how or when you use that paper, it can bring you joy. It will bring you value.
But you just don't know, like, what discovery, what breakthrough, what empowerment moment is waiting for you on that 600 GSM arches.
Yeah.
Or, whatever your
Yeah.
power paper is.
Yeah. Power paper.
You know, even if, I'll just lay it out, you paint on the good stuff, it's a holy hot mess, right? And I always talk about, like, finding small moments within a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the painting as a whole you feel was a struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
But finding these pockets of usefulness, these pockets of these little areas of the painting that you can congratulate yourself on, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that good paper holds tremendous value, even if the finished piece, is it ever finished? The finished piece, is communicates a little bit of struggle, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, at the very least, that paper is proof that you were here and you were brave and you did something for you. And just knowing that you're allowed to do that, because so many of us grow up feeling like we're not. So many of us grow up feeling like we're not allowed to take up that space.
Yeah.
Like we're not allowed to make a big mess because messes are bad. And so sometimes it's an act of rebellion, right? Using the fancy paper that you're hoarding for the time when you finally feel like you're qualified to use it, using it before that time is an act of rebellion and taking up the space that was always yours. It was already yours.
Oh my gosh. It's just so good, because you're never going to feel qualified.
No, never.
Like, as parents, like, we're never going to feel qualified all the years. So you're never going to feel qualified enough for that paper. You're never going to, it's like you said it earlier, it's like a moving target.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I know from experience, I have written 2 art books, 2. Yes, thank you. I have 30 classes on Skillshare. I have done so many tutorials. I have had so many people tell me how great my art is. So much external validation. And I still have days where I wake up and I think I'm a sham. I'm a big fraud. Everybody just doesn't actually know that I am a loser and I'm just pretending at being whatever they think that I am.
Yes. I'm partially cutting you off because I'm so excited, but it's so true. Like, let's sit here for a moment in what you just, Pandora's box you just opened up, because you just said you're a teacher with tons of experience. People are constantly, they're telling, I get comments every day of how I've changed people's lives and I'm so talented and blah, 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 blah. And it means the world to me. So blah, blah, blah. It doesn't,
I get you.
But I still, like, I'll be sitting there, working on a new video for this community. I will be developing part of a new product. And I will say to my husband, I literally think I just said this like 3 days ago. Like, what gives me the right?
Yeah.
What gives me the right, And then I'll have to catch myself.
So let me tell this quick story. So,
Tell it.
So when my first book was about to be published, it's important to know that publishing a book was like my lifelong dream. Did I think that my first book would be an art book? No, I did not. But regardless, it was like living in a dream. A publisher reached out to me over Instagram DMs. They were like, "We think you'd make a good book." I was like, "What is this life?" And I had a baby, and then I wrote the book while my son was a newborn, like strapped to my chest, writing, standing up while he was sleeping. And fast forward a year when I'm getting my first copy of my book that's about to be published, like in bookstores. My partner got the package and he knew what it was. So he opened it and he slid it into my hands. And for the first like millisecond, I just felt this euphoria. I just felt amazing. Like, wow, I did it. And then immediately after, dread, overwhelming dread. I had to sit down. I had debilitating anxiety for 3 days after that. I was holding my book and I was like obsessively looking through it for typos. I was having my partner read it being like, "Does this even make sense? Like, is this even good?" And I was terrified. I was so terrified that everybody would hate it, that nobody would buy it, that people would buy it and then bash it on the online reviews. And, it was a really important lesson for me that even when you reach your dreams, if you're not practicing self-compassion, you are not going to allow yourself to feel joy. And so it's not the dream that's going to bring you joy. It's not the goal. It's not finally achieving whatever it is that you think you need to achieve. That's not what's going to bring you the joy. In fact, if you don't allow yourself joy now, you're never going to feel it. You're only going to feel not good enough forever.
Building that habit and the intentionality of being kind to ourselves. And I practice this actually, literally, I'm looking out the window right now, friends. There is a groundhog in my garden. There's a freaking groundhog just like,
wow.
Go away. Anyway. So often in my videos, when I'm filming, I make a point, I write a note, I remind myself to have moments where I am complimenting myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I hope that my habit kind of like seeps through the screen so that the community starts doing the same for themselves.
Oh, yeah. That's how I teach too. And it's funny because it's not like I had this whole big strategy to say like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I teach this way. It's more like the way that I teach is kind of, I just say exactly what I'm telling myself, like what I'm thinking as I'm painting. And so much of what I say and when I'm teaching is like, well, that didn't turn out the way that I expected. That's okay. We'll see if we can make it something different. Still not going the way that I expected. Well, I'm practicing a lot of courage here, friends, because I'm going to keep pushing on.
I do the same thing. I'm very like, okay, well, that's not the best, but we'll come back to that later. I say these things to myself. I'm gonna leave that alone because if I keep fussing and discussing, that's really gonna go south. And so I'm gonna let that dry. And I really enjoy it. Like, I love what's happening here. And I will literally, even if I'm not filming, I will point to it and be like, whoa, look at that. I want to do that somewhere else. And,
oh yeah, I do the same thing. I love doing that. Yeah, that was actually, so I have a free challenge on YouTube that I do. It's called Painting the Wilderness. And while I was filming one of the videos, basically it's like 10 days of landscape tutorials, right? And while I was filming one of the videos, there was this beautiful pocket of like luminous blends that looked like a light was shining behind a mountain. And while I was painting, I covered it up. And I was like, I remember thinking, oh man, should I repaint this? Because I covered up the most beautiful part. And instead, I kept it in And I told everybody in the video, this is the part. This is where I cover up the thing that I wish I hadn't covered up. And I survived. It's okay.
You survived. Exactly. Oh, it's so good. So if y'all are wondering, like, is it like the second coming happening, or what is happening with my light? I'm not sure. Maybe it's a tornado, but
you are a lot darker than you were before.
Isn't that insane? Like, I don't even know what to say, but it is so dark in my studio right now. But you know what? We're doing it. It's all good. It's all good. This conversation is just blowing my mind. Friends, if it's blowing your mind and you haven't already hit the like button, I'm guessing you have, because like all the likes. But go ahead and give this video some love. I've said it so many times, but you know, hitting that like button is the one small, free, simple thing that you can do to help out this channel and make sure that people who need to hear this conversation hear it and see it. And so, well, see our lovely faces, of course. So, and if you're down there and while you're at it, you know, if you have a question for Colby or myself, now I cannot make any promises about Colby answering questions on my channel, but if you do have a question, just go ahead. Let's get the conversation started. You know, if you have had a breakthrough with your kind of creative mental health, a practice that you are following, share it with us. The one thing I love so much about this community here on my channel is the conversations we have and how we help each other. So get into the comments, and we're going to go ahead and continue this conversation now because I have more questions, and who knows, by the time we're done, I may be completely in the dark. And no, you know what? Tell us a little bit about your books, and then I want to see if you're willing to share your favorite painting. Now, it can be your favorite piece of all time. Oh yeah, here comes the rain. Here comes the rain. It can be your favorite piece of all time. It could be your favorite recently, but I would just love to see, I'd love to see you compliment yourself. Like, what does that sound like when you do that, you know? And, but I do want to, you know, hear a little bit, tell us about your books and what they mean to you and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. So I have two books. The first one is called Wilderness Watercolor Landscapes. Actually, I have them sitting here too. I didn't plan on that, but here they are. This is my first book. It's called Wilderness Watercolor Landscapes, and it is all about painting landscapes. So basically my mission, in addition to the mindset stuff, right, is to make painting feel doable. And so the goal with these, with both of my books really, is to take seemingly complicated things, right, like painting a mountain and a reflection and Milky Way in the sky, is to break it down into individual pieces so that it doesn't feel so intimidating. It was very, very important to me that it wasn't just, okay, here's what you paint, and you know, let's skip a bunch of steps and here's what it should look like. It was very important to me that, so like, here's one of the finished paintings from my book. It's called Sunbeam Mountain Meadow. I wanted it to be very step by step. So like layers moving along just a little bit at a time, so that you actually look at this process of painting a landscape and see how you can do it, right? How it's nothing more than, you know, several layers of strokes of paint, and how your painting might not look like mine, but it will still be a painting. It will still be a landscape. So my first book has 30 step-by-step landscapes, and then my second book has 25 step-by-step seascapes. There were originally 30, but it got to be too long. So, because I am very committed to having it be broken down into tiny, tiny pieces so that it's super doable. And so that made the projects longer than my publisher could publish. I think maybe one thing, like you asking about what my very favorite painting is, honestly, it changes. I often will paint something and I'll think, Yeah, that was fine. But especially when I'm like in doing something that really matters to me and I'm trying to push myself, like when I wrote these books. It's as a side note, it was like really hard to write these books because almost every single project that I practiced, I was like, man, this is the best thing I've ever painted, and I can't even show anybody yet. But so this project is called Pale Stony Creek, this one right here, in my Seascapes book. And it was one of the first, well, not one of the first, but it was definitely a project. I spent like 2 hours on it. And it's more detailed than I usually spend. And I tried a technique that I wasn't sure was going to work for the stones, where instead of painting each individual stone, I basically just, here, let's show you.
Show us
Like,
the step.
yeah, you start with the underlayer, and then you just kind of outline some of the stones, and then you just paint the shadows in between. So, and which is, you know, what you do with watercolor, right? You don't paint light things; you paint dark things around the light things to do shadows.
Unless you're correcting a really big mistake, which
Yes.
I feel like
I'm a huge fan of using white gouache. So
I know you are, because I did Village by the Sea, remember?
yes, I do remember.
Village by the Sea, friends. I'm going to link it below. It was a whole video. It was really fun. And I remember reading that, like, earlier in the book, I think you said, like, however you need to get it done, and that makes you joyful about getting it done, like, get it done with whatever materials. And you talked about kind of mixed media-ish approach.
Yes. Yeah, I talked about how a lot of like watercolor purists believe that if you use any kind of opaque paint, then it's not watercolor anymore. And it's cheating. And it's not.
They're gonna get in the comments here. They're gonna get in the because they get mad. I mean, I still love you. Hi, they. You know who you are. I do still love you. I'm glad you're here. But they will get into my comments, and then they get mad when I call them out in, you know, just my teaching style. Like, but that is a thing.
I know. And here's what I have to say about that. Here's what I have to say about people saying, but it's not watercolor, it's mixed media. And to that I say, if that makes you feel better, that's fine. If you want to call my paintings mixed media, I don't care.
Great. Fine. It's not like a bad thing.
No, that's fine. It's just
the light's coming back.
Oh, good. We can see your beautiful face.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
So funny. So, friends, I am going to be linking all sorts of fun stuff below. You know, anything Colby wants me to link below is going to be below. So check it out. But don't be going down there and getting distracted yet. But it's all going to be down there. The books, all the things. And remember, hit that like button, because just like I seriously, Colby, like you open your mouth and just comes out like creative comes out.
Oh goodness.
Seriously, I know it's okay. I'm allowed to compliment you endlessly.
And I should be better at receiving compliments. Thank you. That's very nice to hear that my message is resonating with you.
This feels like a therapy session. It feels so good. No, it's good. It's good.
Oh.
It's good. Okay, another aha moment. See what we have to teach each other?
If it's to feel challenged because I'm trying to grow, then this frustration is a good thing.
I have chills because I have never verbalized what you're saying in the way that you're saying it. Like, what do you do when you are working on something and it is absolutely not going the way you thought?
Yeah. So what I do if something is not going the way that I am intending for it to go is I usually